Welcome to the Building Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Don Tarjanskis, and join us as we explore the world of construction. Each episode, we welcome a guest that shares career highlights and career advice, and hopefully inspires the next generation of construction professionals. Welcome to another edition of the Building Your Career podcast. Today, really excited to have on as a guest, Sinéad Conneely from SimpleWorks. This is a company that have got doing a lot of things differently within this market. They're doing a lot of cool things, and I was really keen to get them on the podcast just to hear their side of the story as well. So Sinéad, I think I'll kick off where I usually kick off. Could you tell me a little bit of an overview of SimpleWorks as a business and where you fit into that as well?
Yeah, thanks. So SimpleWorks is a structural engineering consultancy. We've been going for 5 years. We actually turn 5 tomorrow.
Congratulations.
The 1st of May, which is obviously will be a different tomorrow to when this goes out. But yeah, so we're turning 5 and we've been through some pretty weird times. We set up in 2019, obviously COVID, cost of living crisis, all the rest of it. So it's been interesting, but we set up with a main focus on community and the environment. So for us, the kind of projects that we target and the projects that we like to work on are ones that have a social benefit. So we work a lot with councils, housing associations, community groups. We're doing a project now for Imperial College, a new student centre for them. And then the big focus from the design side is on regenerative design. So the idea that we should be pushing construction projects further. It's not just about sustainability anymore. It's about, can we actually help to regenerate, the planet? Can we be giving back to the environment? Obviously, construction is a heavy carbon emitter, and I think the whole industry knows now how serious that problem is. And I think people are quite collaborative, which is amazing. So lots of engineers are working together across design teams. People are really open to trying to do things a new way, and now clients also are on board. So we try to target clients who really are interested in this idea of regenerative design.
That's awesome, because I think, what the feeling that I'm getting from the market at the moment is that there's a very clear difference between companies who take sustainability and regenerative design seriously and those who just treat it as an add-on or an additional thing that they can say to their clients that they do. Because I think in this market, particularly when it comes to people working for those companies, they know straight away whether the company actually takes it seriously or not. And the very fact that you're kind of going a little bit above and beyond in terms of just the sustainability side of things and adding something that's extra, I think is really cool and will resonate with a lot of our listeners as well. Because I did see on the website that you were certified B Corporation too. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that actually means for our listeners?
Yeah, so B Corp is a certification that you go through. You answer kind of a big questionnaire. Sometimes you have to make changes to your business in order to get enough points to be accredited. They look at things like your internal processes, your governance, the way that you treat your staff, the way that you treat your suppliers, the way that you vet your suppliers. And I think for a services company like us, it is a lot easier, I think, to become a B Corp compared to, say, like if you were making products or if you were a construction company actually delivering projects at construction, because your supply chain is a lot messier. Whereas for us, our supply chain is our subconsultants. And what was a really nice thing when doing the B Corp accreditation is that we didn't have to change very much. It was like a really nice kind of process of going through, say, looking at our supply chain, looking at our subconsultants and realizing that the things that B Corp were going to give you points for, like, are they small companies? Are they local? Are they run by minorities? And a big percentage of ours already were. And then there was the kind of like the easy stuff. Are you paying London living wage? But even that for us, we pay all of our staff well, but we had never asked the cleaning company if they were paying the cleaners a London living wage, right? So there was like small things. So we had to change cleaning company. So there was some really nice things that we should have been thinking about, but maybe we weren't. Same as kind of the internal governance, the way that we review things, the way that we feedback stuff to staff, the way that we support staff. We thought we had all of that kind of sewn up. And then what was really nice going through B Corp is that they give you kind of tips on how to make sure that you are doing the best that you can for your staff in terms of their development, how you structure their reviews, how you are you giving them enough training, how much of your budget every year is assigned to their training and their development. So again, it was very, very easy changes for us to make sure that we could become the B Corp.
Mm-hmm.
And then from now through to whenever, there'll be kind of an annual review with them to see how are we improving and where can we do more, basically.
I love that. That's just not that. That's a company actually taking it seriously and not it just being all talk. There's a clear set of guidelines that you have to kind of adhere to in order to be able to classify yourself as B Corp. Yeah, I absolutely love that. So if we can just take it back a little bit, then could you give us a little bit of an understanding of how you kind of first got into the industry and what was it about the industry that made you want to kind of pursue a career?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny one because I don't think I ever really planned to get into construction. My dad actually works in construction, and it was only about 6 months into my first job that I realized we were now in the same industry. So I think my career is almost a product of the last recession. So in secondary school, I was good at maths. I loved maths. So I kind of, you end up working harder, I think, at the things you're good at, which isn't necessarily the right way to do things, but I just loved studying maths, doing my maths homework, all the rest of it. So the kind of natural thing for my guidance counselor to tell me in school was be an engineer or an accountant, or I can't remember what else. And she said engineer, and I was like, oh, I don't really know what that is. I think when you're in school, the more exciting things, like I wanted to be a vet, I wanted to be a pathologist, just a bit odd. I was watching too much CSI Miami. I wanted to be in the police, and I was very easily distracted, basically. Anything that looked a bit cool, I wanted to do. But then some engineers came in to talk to us in my final year of secondary school. Ireland's a bit different to the UK in that you don't apply to uni until you've done your exams. So I was 18 and had finished the equivalent of the A level. And at that point, your application form goes off. So you can actually change what you're applying for up until the day of your last exam.
Mm-hmm.
So some engineers came in to talk to us in my final year of secondary school. They were civil engineers. They talked a lot about problem solving. They talked a lot about, collaborative working, maybe needing to at least enjoy maths and, working in a team and working on complex problems. And they also just kind of talked like they liked their jobs. It seemed like they were fulfilled. And it was the last thing that held my attention. But the way that my guidance counselor managed to convince me that I wanted to do it was that, because at that time it was the height of the construction boom in Ireland, and at that time there was a big focus on renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of money being put into offshore wind farms, solar power. I think when times are good, it's easy to kind of spend money on problems that maybe seem far away. So I applied to do undenominated engineering at university. So you study all the engineerings in the first year and then you choose. So I chose civil for the second year. And the plan was to specialize in offshore wind. And then I graduated 2010 into the recession. There was no jobs in Ireland.
So I finished architecture in 2010 after 6 years. So yeah, I was exactly the same.
Yeah, but in a way it was kind of cool because, we were all 22. We had an engineering degree, which is quite a valuable thing to have. I think if you get through engineering, you can go into lots of stuff. Some people went into accountancy, they went into finance, they went into project management. Some people went back and retrained as teachers.
Mm-hmm.
What no one did was get a job. So I actually decided to do a ski season. So I went to Chamonix in France, got a job in a restaurant to try and just, I don't know, have a think about what I was going to do. And I applied to do 2 different masters. One was a master's in civil engineering at UCL, and one was a master's in applied maths at Imperial College. So I picked the applied maths because I thought, I've done engineering, it might open a few doors, and if I decide I want to come back to engineering, I can. So I did that, briefly toyed with the idea of going into finance, decided that wouldn't have been a right fit for me. I would have loved the math side of it, but I don't think I would have loved the kind of like, what's it all for? I'd be a lot richer now. And then, it was kind of February 2012, and I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. And all the graduate programs were closed. I'd missed all the deadlines for all the grad programs with the big companies. So I went on to the careers site at Imperial College, and AKT2 had a job ad up. So I sent my CV off. I think the following week I had an interview. Following week I had a job offer, and I think in that interview the managing director of AKT, the way that he used to hire people was kind of, does it sound like you can learn?
Mhm.
Does it sound like you are open to the fact that you're not that good at some stuff?
Mhm.
Like a little bit of self-awareness, and do I think you're going to get on with the people in your team?
Mhm.
Which is why he would have an interview and offer you the job in the there and then, which is what he did. So that was really exciting. The AKT website was really exciting. They worked on amazing projects, big projects, complex projects. And yeah, so I started that job in October 20. At some point would have been talking to my dad about some project I was working on, and then realized similar to the projects that he works on. And then I was like, wow, I've come into the same industry as my dad without ever meaning to. But obviously there was like something in the subconscious. And obviously we would have talked a lot about what I was going to do. And he probably was very clever at guiding me without telling me. And yeah, so then I worked at AKT for 7 years. Kind of moved up, got to work on really cool, really exciting projects. The teams I was in were always brilliant. And then, yeah, 20 of my co-founders and I, all of whom used to work at AKT, decided we would set up SimpleWorks with the view to kind of what I was touching on before about wanting to work on projects that had more of a community focus.
Mhm. That's awesome. That's an amazing story. And obviously you've kind of come a long way and in a roundabout way ended up back in the construction industry. But something that I can really resonate with, it was very, very tough back in 2010 to get any work in the construction industry whatsoever. But I really like the point that you touched on, the managing director from AKT2, and it was more than just asking your bog standard questions. It was asking, can people learn? And I think that's the thing, and leads quite nicely onto our next point as well, is that at the beginning, you do need to be a bit of a sponge in the industry to just absorb that knowledge and learn everything you can. But if you could give yourself one piece of advice, similar to that MD at AK2 in a roundabout way, was giving advice on the key characteristics you need. So what kind of advice would you give your younger self when you first started off in the industry then?
That it's okay that you don't know everything. I think when I first started, I was so terrified that someone would realize I didn't know anything. I'd come out of 4 years at uni, had done my year working in France, a year doing applied maths. So maybe it was at a slight disadvantage in that like other people were coming straight out of engineering degree, but like I hadn't forgotten the stuff. I was just maybe a bit rusty. But you go from a university setup, or a higher level setup into a job where all of a sudden people don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah,
So they're saying,
yeah.
oh, can you just go away here and use this type of software to design this type of thing? It's going to go in that part of the building because that's their language.
Yes.
And you're sat there looking at them being like, sure, yeah, I can do that. And you go back to your desk and you're like, I have no idea what they just said. And there was always this fear of like not wanting to go back to them and say, I didn't understand. So sometimes I'd ask someone else and they'd be like, oh, it could be this or it could be that. And then I'd do it and I'd go back to them and they'd be like, that's not what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Then sometimes I'd get annoyed. And I've seen this with some of our junior engineers. I would get annoyed and be like, they told me to do something else. And now they're saying that's not what they told me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is hardly ever what happens. It's that you didn't understand because you don't have the language.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my biggest piece of advice would be, if you don't know what someone's saying, just say, I'm sorry. Can you explain it to me again? Like, I'm
That's
really
awesome.
sorry. I don't know. Because in engineering, and one of the things that my first boss said to me, and he drilled it into me, was if you ever make a mistake, you come and tell me. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Please don't ever try and cover it up. Please don't ever try and fix it yourself. So mistakes we talk about, and if you don't know what you're doing, ask. And that's like basically what we always say. It's not all we say, but we try and say that to our engineers now as well. And we say it to each other. Like at the end of the day, we're running an engineering company. There's loads of stuff I don't know.
Yeah.
There's stuff that our engineers teach me. There's stuff that me and my business partners teach each other. We have kind of roundtable sessions with other engineering practices to share knowledge. Like we're always learning. And I think for us as leaders, it's really important to be able to say, I don't know. Someone asks me a question I don't know, I'll say, I don't know. I'll find out, but I don't know.
Right. That's really good advice, and kind of like it's a really unique way and very insightful, and thank you for your openness and honesty there as well, because a lot of people on the podcast say, just ask questions, but you were kind of very open and honest with your background, kind of being a little bit worried to ask questions and just kind of pretending that you know things, but yeah, so I really liked the way you kind of phrased that there. Really, from your perspective, I know obviously you were talking about some of the juniors that you've worked with before, but what do you deem to be the kind of the key characteristics that you personally look out for when you are looking for, top structural engineers?
I mean, we look at, the university they've been to, we look at their grades, but for us, it's more about how we feel when we talk to them. So we've been interviewing recently, and the two people that we offered the jobs to, two graduates, so they're both finishing up their final year this year, were the ones who would say, "I don't know."
Yes.
They would tell us if there was something that they weren't sure about. One of them really impressed my business partner Phil because she had read a chapter in a book that he had read. So I think, when you're going to interview, it's really good to kind of do your research and read up a bit about the people you're going to see. And yeah, it's more about, do you think this person can take feedback?
Yes.
Do you think this person can sit in a room with you, talk through? Because at the end of the day, a big thing with engineering is that there can be lots of ways to do something, but often your calculation is right or it's wrong. If we're talking about one small, a beam calc, it's right or it's wrong. So there's going to be a lot in your early career, especially, but also as you move up, there's going to be a lot of people saying, that's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
that's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
this is wrong, but this is how we can do it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think an ability to take constructive criticism, as long as it's constructive, obviously nobody deserves to be kind of bullied at work or like have unreasonable criticism, but this kind of constructive criticism, feedback. And I guess there's a vulnerability as well that you kind of want to see in people, that that they're going to be open with you. And we try and be really open ourselves with everyone here, and just to promote that. We also want people who we think can challenge us, which is a really difficult thing to do. And sometimes I forget, well, I even just struggle to understand why somebody would feel worried challenging me. Because we invite, our team to challenge us all the time. And sometimes I'll say, someone will have known something was wrong. And then after I've realized it's wrong, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I thought that." And I'm like, "Why didn't you tell me?" They're like, "It's really difficult. It's really difficult." I was like, "Okay, yeah. But we want people who, we want people to feel safe enough to challenge us, and we want, when we're meeting people to talk to them about working here, we want to know that they have that kind of fight in a way,
Mm-hmm.
to push boundaries, and whether it's challenging us, whether it's challenging the industry. We are a small company, but we're quite, I don't know what the word is, but we want to be disruptors, and we want to challenge things. And then for us as well, it's important that people are on the same page as us when it comes to what we're trying to achieve, which is, to deliver really good engineering on projects that matter. So it would be a bit of a mismatch if somebody really wanted to work on like big complex projects in the Middle East, they might not be the best fit for us working on the kind of community projects in the UK.
Awesome. Because that really resonated with me. Obviously, the person had read the same book as one of the directors there. So I think, I know obviously there's your company is a lot of kind of embodied carbon, working on timber and sustainability. If there was people that were kind of interested in that side of things, and either not been given the ability to work on that, but have a genuine interest in their current company, or indeed are looking to find a little niche in terms of a specialist, where do people go to be able to start gathering that information? Is there any books that you could recommend, or any websites, or indeed any events that people can go to as a little bit of a starting point?
So the Institute of Structural Engineers and the Institute of Civil Engineers are both amazing organizations for events, for resources, for training. I think I'm going to have to check the name of the book. But so my business partner Phil wrote a chapter for a book called, I think, The Regenerative Engineer, which is a really interesting. No, I haven't read the whole thing. I read his chapter. I can send you it afterwards if you want to put it in the
that'd be
notes or
great.
something. Yeah, The Regenerative Structural Engineer. And it was published by the Institute of Structural Engineers. So that is kind of a holistic look at how the structural engineer can just rethink how they're inputting into design. And that was published in January, so that's quite new.
Awesome. So we'll include a link in the description below. So
and then I think I think that's a good idea. And then it's, the iStructD has a magazine that comes out every month. But I do think if it's for people who aren't working yet, I wouldn't worry too much about learning everything because you can't learn everything.
Yeah.
I think you want to get into a company who you align with. Like, I'm sure it's the same in most industries. You learn on the job. You can never prepare for, all eventualities. You can never know everything before you start with a company. But I think if you get in with a company who you know is doing the kind of stuff that you want to do, that's how you learn.
Awesome. And I just wanted to touch on as well, because I thought it was quite unique what you were doing in providing kind of a space for everyone to meet like-minded individuals and kind of debate as well. But you had the Sackford sessions running up. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But could you just give me a little bit of an understanding about that? Because I thought a lot of our listeners could really, really engage with that and be interested in that.
Yeah, so the Sackford Sessions is a debate series that's run kind of between ourselves and then our friend David Knight, who I believe you've had on the podcast
Yep, we've
from
done the
Cake
podcast.
Industries.
Yeah.
And the idea was just to get engineers into a room. It's targeted at structural engineers, but we do get other people are allowed. So we get some architects who come. And the debates are supposed to be a bit provocative. So we usually come up with a title that's maybe a bit tongue-in-cheek. We did have one that caused a bit of a very, very minor Twitter storm. And the title of that one was, we did it in partnership with a group called Unstructured, which is a group for female and non-binary engineers in the built environment. And the title of that one was, It's easier to be a woman in engineering than a man, debate. So we had to get two people to argue that it's easier to be a woman and two people to argue that it's easier to be a man. And in all debates, we try and get a mix of genders and a mix of ethnicities and a mix of background. And trying to get a man to stand up and say that it's easier to be a woman in engineering was very difficult. So my business partner, Phil, had to do it, but he did it with one of our old colleagues and my friend Gaia, and they were amazing. And I think that the big thing about having debates like that is that you, in a very non-aggressive environment, because you know that people have been given a debate topic to debate, it's not necessarily their opinion, but these are like intelligent people, they're empathetic people, and they go away and they research it. And some of the things they come back with were the fact that there are less women in engineering, so you're more visible. So if you want opportunities, it's probably easier for you to get opportunities than the average male counterpart. There's also a huge, male mental health crisis at the minute, and men maybe don't have the support that women get from their social networks and stuff like that. And then another point was that because there's less women in engineering, when you look at their background, the women in engineering are probably on average more from the middle classes than the men in engineering. So they are at an advantage in, like, if you just look across the profession. So what was really good about it was that you went in thinking you knew how the debate was going to go, and you left with a whole new kind of insight into, it's difficult to be a man in engineering. Like, and you can't just say one is easier than the other, right? It's super contextual. All of these things are nuanced. One person's experience is completely different to another person's experience, regardless of their gender. Sometimes because of their gender, but not always. And it was just, and I think for us, those debates, they take engineering to another level, right? Because we love our profession. We care very much about our profession. And we want, we want to keep talent. We want to make sure that people are feeling heard. And we definitely, say for me with Unstructured, as a group, we're pushing the kind of agenda for women and non-binary engineers, but at no point do we ever want to be standing in the way of men or men's rights. And up until a few years ago, I wouldn't have even said the word men's rights. But there's been like a huge maturing, I think, in, say, me and, say, the group of women that I know, that it's not a zero-sum game. And, for us in our practice, we're not 50-50. I think we actually have we have more women than men, which is probably the only engineering practice in the UK, but we want equality, right? So we don't want to be pushing one gender's agenda over the other. For us, it's really important that all of our engineers are treated the same way. And what was quite funny coming out of that debate, because some of our staff came, and I asked them the next day, did you enjoy it? And one of them was like, yeah, because afterwards there was a big audience participation, people talking about their experiences. And one of our junior engineers, she said, yeah, it was interesting, but it's super weird. She's never worked anywhere else. She'd only ever worked with us. It's super weird hearing people talk about sexism in their offices. Like, But I don't get it. I was like, you're very sheltered.
Very lucky. Very lucky.
But that's the future. There's huge progress. And I think, the new engineers coming through will see a completely different thing to what I saw. And what I saw was a completely different thing to what the women 10, 20 years ahead of me saw. And I think that's amazing. And I wouldn't even say that we're the only practice thinking about it. Obviously, I think all practices are doing massive, massive things now to support their staff and make sure that they're doing what they can to fight sexism, racism, homophobia, all of it. So there's huge progress in the industry, which is amazing.
And I think, I think one of the things that we're trying to do on the podcast is just to get people's voices heard as well, and make sure that there is like-minded individuals in there, and it's not just this old fuddy-duddy, everyone's dead old and doesn't care about diversity or inclusion or anything like that. It's just to give people a voice and give people a flat platform to go, no, actually, the industry's completely changed. Your preconceptions or what your parents might think of the industry is simply not the case anymore, not what the industry is about or what the industry is moving towards anyway. But I suppose I'll just rephrase the last question. I mean, what can the industry do to kind of attract, retain, and nurture kind of female talent within the industry then? What is it that needs to be done in order to be able to make changes within the industry like you have done already?
I think it's really difficult. And I think I'm not sure that would ever get the construction industry up to like 50-50 male female, and I don't think we necessarily have to either. I think that architecture is more even. There's some consultancy services that are more even.
Mm-hmm.
With engineering, the issue is getting young girls interested in science and maths.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the kind of current research is showing for that. There's like one stream of thinking, which is that young girls are socialized to play with toys that don't promote problem solving, that don't promote the kind of like logical side of the brain, or it's just that girls aren't that into maths. Like I don't like that possibility that that's the answer, but I think targeting young people with a focus on maths, the kind of problem solving subjects, is how you would eventually get more women into engineering. It'll be slow. There's no like magic button, but it's growing. But it's not growing, I think, as quickly as it did maybe in the last 20 years. It went from kind of no women to, I don't know what it is in structural, and maybe it's 20% now. But when you're hiring, it's very difficult because if you've only got 20% applicants, female to male, there aren't enough to go around, So that there's going to be an imbalance. So I do think with engineering, it's targeting girls at a younger age. In terms of like construction as a whole, at the end of the day, it's a labor-intensive job if you're on site.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where we're getting more and more women on the trade side of things is in the prefabrication factories. Mm-hmm. So construction sites are dangerous, and because it's primarily men now, it's actually quite a hostile work environment most of the time. Whereas in the factories where they're building prefabricated elements, kind of modern methods of construction, it's a safer environment. It's easier to attract women because it's kind of more sociable hours. It's, you're kind of, if you're working in a factory and you live nearby, that's an easy kind of like work-life balance. Mm-hmm. So I think the rise of modern methods of construction will there will be a rise in women working on trades and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's just like getting the word out that it's really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Sinead, this has been a real eye-opener for me, and it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And I've really, really enjoyed this podcast and enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much for being a guest. And what we'll do is we'll put links below to everything that SimpleWorks is doing. So please check out the links below in the description. But yeah, Sinead, thank you so much for being a guest on the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. Joining us on the Building Your Career podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and learning about the different career paths available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so we can reach even more listeners. And if anyone wants any free CV advice or simply wants to know the options available to them, don't hesitate to get in touch.